business of getting this done as quickly as possible, the reforms that need to take place. And I do believe that everything is on the table. I think the commission, the existing commissioners need to understand that this commission may entirely change, the entire process might change. I'm just hesitant to disband this at this point because it is the only citizen involvement in the process right now. And that said, I think I made a comment back in December or January that and it was at a time when we were appointing and approving new commissioners, and I think it's great they've been doing a good job, or doing it. It's been better. I think it's obvious that there are some improvements that have been made. We funded the analysts. I think that was a good step. But I did make a comment that I would not appoint a District 5 commissioner until we were through with this process. And I think at the time it was because there was a lot of turmoil going on. I was uncomfortable with appointing anybody to a commission that was in that kind of turmoil. In some ways, I didn't feel like I would wish that on some of my best friends. I mean, it was really to be thrown in the hornet's nest, I think, at that time. I am glad to see some improvements, but certainly I think taking away the only citizen involvement that's in place right now is broken as the system is, if we want to say that. And is as badly needed for reform and changes to the ordinance. I appreciate the citizen involvement that's in place right now. Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I did make an appointment to the commission this year and had a long discussion with the person who I thought was the best candidate, who turned out to be the appointee. She was very aware, obviously. I mean, it's been in the news. She was aware of what she was walking into. And I must say that I'm heartened to hear we have some new people and some new energy and some people that are very serious about trying to improve the commission. When I look back on the MGT report, which we approved in May of 2011, and then I look back on January 28th, which I still had a vacancy and my seat was still looking for someone at that time for District 3 to serve. That had been a year and a half since anyone had tackled the ordinance part of it. Yes, we tackled various things that came out of the MGT report, but neither the council nor the administration had really taken on the ordinance and what needed to be changed in the ordinance. And I applaud and commend my fellow councilors who have brought forth a process now to do that. However, I strongly oppose this bill, and I really, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I hate to use a worn-out term, but we've got 4 new commissioners, and we've got. I heard some eloquent statements on the commissioner's behalf of people who took the time to come down here tonight, and I know it's controversial, and I do think it did take some courage for each of the commissioners to come down and speak, and the chairman about this, and to speak forthrightly about their concerns. But we can't abandon the complaint process. I'm sorry, we can't just drop everything. For how long? How long? We haven't given ourselves a real deadline. I know there's an amendment here to put a sunset on this, but those sunsets can be extended by the city council. But I don't think we're in a position to totally suspend this commission, which is the only public hearing for these cases.
Councilor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I also will not be supporting this simply because if we were talking about suspension of everything, there might be a case for that. I don't know. That's not the case right here. This ordinance asks for suspension of the public process, which is abhorrent. People have spoken to it. Commissioners who now have spent numerous hours, days, looking at this, and I'm sure agonizing over some of the things they have to think about. Now we're telling them, well, thank you very much, but your work is not appreciated or not thought of as important, and you can go home and we'll call you back if we see fit or if the process goes in that direction. However, I was told about a year and a half, well, less than that, because Mr. Cameron has been there for a short period of time. Before that, a lot of folks would not step forward and say, I want to be part of that process, because the process was flawed, completely flawed, I think. But I was threatened by the administration that they were going to put in a choice of their own, and I pleaded with other folks, and I have to say that Mr. Cameron was kind enough and brave enough to step forward and do that, and I think I've seen a lot of changes that are absolutely positive. Are we where we want to be? Probably not. That's why this process is going forward to have the public look at what's going on and have public forums so that people can participate at a greater extent, more so than this 2-minute time limit that people get. So I'm all for that. I am not for suspending the Police Oversight Commission. One other thing that I wanted to ask, Mr. President, if I could, of the administration, is where are we on the APOA? I don't know who does that, but on the contract with the police department.
And what specifically, Mr. President, Council Garduno would be referring to?
The contract.
And the prior contracts, the lawsuits related to that, the present year contract negotiations, we can be a little more clear.
Take your pick, but let me give you one that you could talk to. Why do we give away such important things like a timeline when we know that it's going to come back to us and people are going to say, you know what, well, we can't do it because the contract says we can't. Oh, well, what if we did this? Oh, we can't because the contract says such. What is it that we're doing in the contract negotiations that allows that kind of insularness to the police officers?
Mr. President, Council Garduno, that's an excellent question. I can't specifically answer it because I wasn't around, nor was this administration around when that provision was coming in. I know in a lot of times through the negotiation process itself, when negotiations fail, that sometimes those collective bargaining units will come to council themselves. There'll be pressure exerted in that manner and the like. Don't know if that was related to this particular case and the provision you're referring to, but the specific thing is that it is in the contract that was continuing on. The court's ruled that the non-economic provisions are evergreened in. That's being litigated currently, and I think you have to play by where the goalposts are at the present time. I also just want to make one, excuse me, Mr. President, Council Garduno, if I could just finish my comment. I think the thing that the administration threatened you that I just heard, the only 4 words missing from that was once upon a time. Because I stood here and heard you, Mr. Counselor, say that you didn't believe in this particular body. You had no faith in it. It had no credibility. And so I'll leave that as the record. I will leave that as the record.
You are reinventing what I said. What I said was that I could not find a member to serve in a dysfunctional police oversight commission. We want to, I'll research it for you, but that's what I said. The threat was, Mr. President.
We have other speakers,
absolutely.
Other councilors want to comment.
Most of that time was taken by.
I can come back to you if you'd like. I know there's some general questions for the administration if you want to focus them on the actual issue of the
main question about the contract is that this administration has been in that seat, if you will. The executive branch has been in power for 3.5 years. We have been operating under the same contract for 3.5 years. We have not renegotiated anything with APOA. We have been paying a negotiator $400,000 a year to negotiate, and we haven't had any movement. We still are operating under Chavez administration contract.
And Mr. President, Council Garduno, that is correct, that the raises that were appropriated in through the City Council budget process were always offered, and they weren't accepted. We can't do anything more than that. We're subject to limitations of the appropriations. And so we never get...
No other part of the contract has been negotiated.
I'm sorry?
No other part of the contract has been looked at.
Many of them have been looked at, and they've gone through the negotiation process.
And we have given those sanctions away.
I'm sorry about giving those sanctions away.
We agreed with the union to go ahead and have those timelines when we knew that this probably would happen.
Well, I think it's a little bit difficult to reach that particular conclusion because the contracts have those provisions in there. If those provisions are deemed to be beneficial to the officers themselves and their representatives in the APOA wanted to take them away, we would have to bargain for that. In order to bargain for it, we would have to probably give something up. And we haven't been in a position to do that. Some may say that we would have to buy that out. I'd imagine if we were able to do a 7 or 8% raise, there's non-economic factors such as the timelines that may be beneficial. But we haven't been able to do that.
Councilor, we're going to go to some other discussion.
Thank you, Mr.
We're on the bill 51, suspending the operation of the Police Oversight Commission. Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment that I am not going to introduce this evening, and I want to thank Councilor Jones and Councilor Winter for bringing this bill forward. And I've been torn on this legislation and very concerned because I truly believe there are some problems within the Police Oversight Commission. But for myself, the most important board member that I can appoint to any board in the city is a member of the POC. I think it's a vitally important position, and I'm just very concerned that if we suspend the POC for any given time period, especially with the Department of Justice looking at the Albuquerque Police Department, that it would send the wrong message, I think, to the Department of Justice. We've worked long and hard, including Andres Valdez back in the 90s. He was working with Casinos United to create the Police Oversight Commission. And it took years to create the POC. And we have that POC in place today. And we know there are problems, and that's what the MGT report has stated. But this ordinance, in effect, prematurely repeals the POC ordinance and creates a new procedure by default. I don't think we want that default to allow the chief of police and the IRO to be taking citizens' reports and making those decisions. I believe that we need a civilian oversight committee to be making those recommendations to the police chief. Again, I think the POC in today's world here in Albuquerque, with the number of police shootings, the perception that people have about the Albuquerque Police Department there's been a lot of criticism. Again, I think that we've got one of the finest police departments in America, and there are a few bad apples in the police department, but the majority of the police officers that work for APD truly care about their jobs. But again, to remove the citizens' complaints and put it in the hands of the IRO and the chief of police, and then if they don't like the decision, then it would go to the CAO of Albuquerque, which could be done anyway, I just think sends the wrong message to the Department of Justice and sends the wrong message to the citizens of our community.
Councilor Winter.
Councilor Sanchez, Mr. President, I completely agree, and that wasn't the intent, I think, when we started. But my point is, it is not working. And I take responsibility for my part, because I appoint somebody just like everyone, and I think it's our responsibility. If something doesn't work on that commission, it's our responsibility, and I think our oversight needs to be there, which maybe it wasn't in the past. And it's nice to hear that the commission really understands there's some issues and that they're going to be working on that. And I hope this council makes sure that they follow through on those issues, and that is our responsibility. So I think that this has been great debate and great discussion because it puts it out on the table what the issues are, and I think at least the commission knows there's some issues, and I'm really hopeful and that the bill that Councilor Garduño and I have works, and that we get a good mix of folks, we get some good, and the ordinance is changed to make it good for everybody. So I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Councilor Myers.
Thank you. Can I have Ms. Hammer, can you come up? And I do appreciate the discussion since I know I was not here for a lot of this, and I know and appreciate all of those that are on the commission. As it's been discussed, I know there's probably not a tougher commission that we've got, and it sounds like you guys have not only spent the time and the effort to really understand how to make it better and more transparent. But I wanted to ask you, Ms. Hammer, so you do not support this ordinance?
Mr. President, Councilor Myers, I take no position on this ordinance. The Police Oversight Commission is the governing body over myself, and they oversee the work that I do. I was appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council, so ultimately it's the city council who is my boss. but my direct supervisor, if you will, is the Police Oversight Commission. So I would take no formal position as to this
And
ordinance.
tell me again how long you've been in the position?
I've been in this position since September of 2012.
And would it be fair to say, or can you just kind of enlighten us as to kind of the process that you've seen the commission go through? With regard to education and training and just the difference in the transparency from the time you've seen them act?
I can say that, not to toot my own horn, but a large portions of the changes in the Police Oversight Commission has been in part through my work. All the changes in the review of the officer-involved shootings have been through myself presenting, if you will, a closing argument type presentation, photographs, and conclusions based on facts of officer-involved shootings through a public television airing. Previously, it was a letter that was given to the POC that was never aired in public. And the commissioners, I provide with them the entire criminal investigation with all the officers' names redacted, of course, pursuant to the contract, but that they have the full, all the information that I have, more or less, they use to decide whether they're going to agree with my findings or not. And in the end, it really is a decision, does the Police Oversight Commission agree with the findings that I make on individual citizen police complaints and in the officer-involved shootings. And to date, I believe in the hundreds of cases that we've had one case that I would say that there is a disagreement between the Police Oversight Commission and myself on one SOP violation. So I think in general, the Police Oversight Commission, by the vast majority of the time, approves the work of my finding. I'm a career prosecutor. I was in charge of the Public Corruption Division of the District Attorney's Office, and I've based my entire career on litigating facts. And it's facts that drive what the results of the citizen police complaints are, and it's facts that drive my conclusions regarding officer-involved shootings.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your service.
Councilor Hurst. Thank you, Ms. Hammer. And I don't really have a question for you, unless someone else might. I'm not in favor of this legislation for a number of reasons. One of which is that what it says to our volunteers who are willing to serve on this board, to volunteer, who I just appointed to this board. I think it set a horrible precedent if we were to get these people in place and get them training and then thank them for their hard work and, as we've heard tonight, a lot of thought, and then say, no thanks, just go away for a while and don't call us, we'll call you. I think that would be. In terms of oversight, what I really don't understand about this legislation is it almost seems to me to be sort of like a temper tantrum. It would almost be like if people didn't like some rulings in the courts, that you abolish the court system. Well, then what? Then people do what? They don't have any place to go anywhere with their complaints. Then it would just seem to make no sense. Or we've had lots of problems with the Inspector General. We've gone through several, and we've had discussions about how that office should be organized, but no one ever suggested we don't have an Inspector General because the office isn't working correctly. I think this is a function that we need. I think part of the problem is we have essentially quasi-military organization, the police department, and we have citizens oversight because they work for the public. That's the ultimate reflection of what we have in this country of citizens or civilian control of the sort of quasi-military or the police department. And it's a very tough thing to get right. It's a very difficult balance to strike just right. And we're going to be working on this for a while, folks. And if, this ordinance isn't going to be drafted overnight. And if we suspend this commission, it's going to be suspended for a long time. We're not going to have anything in place that could be there to assist people and give people a public viewing of these complaints. And I think it would be the wrong way to go. Finally, getting into a policy thing in terms of the collective bargaining agreement, I think we could pass an ordinance that would bind the hands of the administration in future negotiations. So we couldn't pass an ordinance that would actually violate the existing agreement. So that's something we should look at. We should look at policy and not be afraid to pass ordinances that would restrict what the administration could do in the future collective bargaining action. But I think we also have to recognize that we cannot violate the rights of the officers, which are their current contract. So For all those reasons, I think we need to put it forward, or we need to keep some review in place, and I'm going to oppose this legislation.
Councilor Arnold Jones.
Mr. President, I have 4 questions, if I might, and one is directed to Mr. Gomez, if I might, please. Mr. Gomez?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. After all of this, did I hear you say that it would be worse to not have citizens oversight, to have some citizen participation? Did I hear that correctly?
Could you say it again?
I said, I thought I heard you say, given all that had happened, it would be worse to not have a citizen review. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, it would be worse not to have some kind of citizens review it. I would say 2 years ago, get rid of it, but right now, it's getting better.
Right, I appreciate that, thank you very much. The second question is, Mr. President, and maybe Councilor Winter could help with the question here. What is our status on our task force? What is our timeline? And are we making progress? Because I think it directly bears on whether or not we take action here on this bill.
Councilwoman.
Mr. President, Councilor Arnold Jones, we are moving forward. In fact, we have 102 applicants for the 11 members, so there's some great participation. Councilor Garduño and I are going to meet, and I tell you what, it is very important that we move as quick as we can, and we're going to do that. We want to make sure, I think the number one thing on this is to make sure we get good people on that task force from all areas. And so that's, I think, the intent, and that's going to either make it or break it, and we all know that. So we're trying to work with all different groups to make sure that happens. So we're going to move quickly. Councilor Garduño, anything else?
Councilor Arnold.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Winter. Councilor Arnold Jones, thank you for the question, because I think it's something that's come up, and it seemed like we were going slowly, but I think it was intentional, in the sense that we wanted to make sure we had it right, and we wanted to make sure that enough people heard about it, that there would be reaction to it. And timeline-wise, like Councilor Winter said, we had a window of May 3rd to June 3rd for applications to come in. We also, if you will, separated the areas of interest that people could apply to, and people have done that. I don't have the names in front of me, and I really don't want to know, because it's not going to be my job to choose those folks, because we have a committee to do that. So I think it's moving forward well. I think the important part, after choosing the task force members, is to have those public meetings. And we talked about 3 meetings, and maybe we need to have 4. I don't know at this point. That task force will decide that. These are kind of the framework part of the ordinance.
I appreciate that. Just 2 more questions. If we were to support this ordinance tonight, is it my understanding that we could compromise the amount of evidence that a police officer is required to retain? And maybe Mr. Zaman could answer that question.
Mr. Zamora.
Mr. President, Councilor Arnold Jones, and I know there are people in here who know this issue better than I do, but I'll take a shot at it. The current SOP within the police department is for officers to retain images and videos that they've captured on their lapel cameras for a period of 90 days. That coincides with the 90-day time period in the POC ordinance. If we were, and we're not doing this in this bill, but if we were to say that citizens would have 120 days, 150, 180 days in which to file their complaint, we would have to go in and work with the police department to make sure that all the relevant information was retained for that period of time.
Thank you. So my 4th point is, and maybe Councilor Jones would consider this, I think it has not been working, but we've heard a lot of evidence tonight that there is progress. But I take this so seriously and have considered this because it wasn't working, that I would recommend that rather than disposing of this ordinance, that we postpone it as an encouragement to move this task force forward quickly. Because That really does bother me, really bothers me. But I also know that you can't keep putting it off if it's not working. And I would recommend, and maybe Councilor Jones, you would consider a postponement to a date certain, because I think it's that important.
Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor Arnold Jones and witness. I'm going to close it. I appreciate your suggestion. However, Councilor Winter and I brought this forward because of multiple complaints about the workings of the POC. Obviously, we had put something in place, the council put something in place to revamp and relook and take a look at the ordinance and try to fix it, but the complaints never stopped when that happened. And so we were attempting to satisfy the citizens and the multiple citizens, not just the 6 or 7 who come in here and speak every time we have a council meeting, but to try to make this a more workable situation. I think it's also a message to some of the members of the commission, and I appreciate IRO hammer, not easy to say. I appreciate the members of this commission. It is a very difficult commission. However, I think it's very important this commission, to a man, to every person on it, understands that it is not their prerogative to overstep the boundaries of the ordinance under which this commission is formed. And I'm confident the city council will do their best, the quickest as they can, to come up with a good rewrite of this ordinance. I think that this was important that we get this out here, that people have an opportunity to speak about it, to address it. But I must say to those who have said it is better to have what we have than not have it, that you remember that. So with that, I would like to take this to a vote.
Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll close briefly. And first time in a long time, I've heard there were some good things happening at the commission. So I just urge that the commission keep trying to improve your all's policies or what you're doing, and hopefully this city council will oversee that and also do what we need to do to change the ordinance to make it work. So, urge your support.
The motion is second for the two pass of 051. Those in favor, if you'll raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, raise your hand and say no.
No.
No, the motion fails. We'll take a 30-minute break.